They said love hits you when you least expect it, like a soccer ball to the face. And honestly, that's pretty much how mine started. It was supposed to be just another Friday night at the State College Sports Festival. Crowded bleachers, overpriced nachos, the smell of popcorn and sweat mixing in the air. I wasn't even there for the game. I was just helping my friend Lucy film the event for her journalism project. But then she appeared. Her name was Riley Carter, captain of the university's women's soccer team, the kind of girl who didn't just walk. She owned every inch of ground she stepped on. You could feel the stadium shift when she ran, powerful, graceful, fierce. The floodlights caught in her hair, and for a moment the whole world just paused. I didn't believe in love at first sight. I still don't, maybe. But there was something, an energy, a pull, a quiet chaos that made my heart stutter. Riley didn't know me. She didn't even see me, not really. I was just another face behind a camera lens. But my camera, it loved her. Every shot, every frame seemed to worship her movement. When she scored that first goal, the roar of the crowd drowned everything else, but I swear I heard my own heartbeat louder. After the game, while Lucy chased interviews, I lingered near the field, pretending to review footage. The night air was sharp, and my fingers were freezing, but I couldn't leave. Something told me that night wasn't done with me yet. And I was right. She came jogging toward the sidelines, jersey damp, hair slicked back, cheeks flushed. Her energy was magnetic, wild yet calm, like a storm that somehow made you feel safe in its center. "You got some good shots?" she asked, her voice low and husky from the game. I blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, plenty. You were amazing out there." She grinned, not the polite kind, but the kind that makes your stomach twist. "Guess I'll have to see them sometime." "Sure," I said, fumbling for words. "If you want." "I do." And just like that, she jogged away, leaving me with a memory that would replay in my mind for weeks. Back in the dorm that night, I rewatched every clip of her. Every movement, every expression. It wasn't just admiration, it was something deeper. Something terrifyingly beautiful. I dated guys before, gone through the motions, said the right words. But nothing had ever felt real. Until Riley. And maybe that was the scariest part, realizing that what I'd always thought was normal had just been noise, and now I was finally hearing music. A week later, I saw her again. Lucy had managed to score a follow-up interview, and somehow Riley remembered me. "Hey, camera girl," she said, flashing that signature grin. "You're back." "Professional dedication," I replied, trying to sound casual, though my voice betrayed me. "Or maybe," she teased, "you just wanted to see me again." I laughed it off, but inside my chest burned. We talked for a while after Lucy packed up, small talk at first, then stories about classes, music, the stress of being in college. It felt easy, natural, like we'd known each other for years. And when she brushed a loose strand of hair from her forehead, I caught myself wanting to do the same. That night she sent me a message. "Still up?" "Yeah. Come walk with me." We met near the old bleachers. The field lights were dimmed, and the air smelled faintly of grass and rain. Riley was in her hoodie and shorts, hair loose, eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "You know," she said, kicking at the dirt, "I usually hate interviews. But I didn't mind yours." "I wasn't exactly the one asking questions," I reminded her. "Still," she smiled. "You listened." Something in her tone made my throat tighten. We walked in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't demand words. Then she turned to me. "Do you ever feel like you're pretending?" she asked quietly. "Pretending what?" "To be the person everyone expects you to be." I hesitated. "All the time." She looked at me, really looked like she was seeing through every mask I'd ever worn. "I thought it was just me," she whispered. That night changed everything. We started talking more, late night calls, morning texts, shared playlists. She'd send me photos of the sunrise after early practice. I'd send her sketches of things that reminded me of her, a soccer ball in the rain, a girl running toward the light. She said she liked my art because it felt honest. I said I liked her because she made me want to be honest. But love, especially the kind that breaks rules, never comes easy. It started with whispers. People noticed how much time we spent together, how she'd always find me in a crowd, how our eyes lingered a little too long. Rumors spread fast in a small college town. "Are you and Riley?" "You know," Lucy asked one night, eyes wide. I froze. "No, of course not. We're just friends." The lie tasted like metal in my mouth. But the truth? The truth was that every time Riley touched my arm or laughed at something I said, I wanted to close the distance between us and forget the world existed. One evening after practice, she found me sitting by the bleachers again. The sunset painted the sky in soft gold and pink, and she sat beside me, quiet for a moment. "People are talking," she said finally. "I know. Does it bother you?" "Should it?" I asked. She looked at me, that same intense gaze that made everything else fade. "Maybe not. But it bothers me that it bothers me." There was so much weight in her voice, fear, confusion, longing. I wanted to reach out to tell her it was okay. Instead I whispered, "Riley, what are we doing?" She exhaled shakily. "I don't know. But I don't want to stop." And before I could think, before I could stop myself, I leaned in. The kiss wasn't perfect. It was hesitant, trembling, two souls learning a new language in the dark. But it was real. And in that moment everything finally made sense. The days after that were a blur of stolen glances and secret smiles. We weren't together. Not publicly, but every time she brushed her fingers against mine, the world felt right again. Still, secrets have a way of demanding to be found. It happened during an away game. Someone on her team had seen us. By Monday, half the campus was whispering, "Did you hear? Riley Carter's seeing a girl." "Who?" "That art major, I think Emma something." The looks, the judgment, the mockery, it came fast and sharp. Riley's coach called her in for a talk. She came out pale, jaw tight. "He said it's not good for the team's image," she muttered bitterly. "As if who I love affects how I play." I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I can handle it," she said, but her voice cracked on the last word. That night she didn't text or call, and I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if love was worth losing yourself over. When she finally showed up at my dorm 3 days later, she looked exhausted, eyes rimmed red, hoodie pulled low. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I just needed space." "It's okay," I said, though my chest ached. "You don't owe me anything." "I do," she said, stepping closer. "Because you're the only person who makes me feel like I'm not crazy for wanting this." Her words broke something open inside me. I pulled her into a hug, and for a long moment neither of us moved. "I don't care what they say," I whispered. "Me neither," she said, but her voice trembled. "I just wish it were easier." The weeks that followed tested us both. Riley faced pressure from her coach, her family, and the media that suddenly wanted a piece of her story. I tried to be her calm, her safe place, but sometimes even love isn't enough to silence the noise. One night after a brutal practice, she came to my room, shoulders slumped. "They benched me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Until things cool down." I felt the anger rise like fire. "That's not fair." "Life isn't," she said bitterly. "Especially when you're trying to be something people don't want you to be." I took her face in my hands. "You don't owe the world their comfort, Riley." Her eyes softened. "Then what do I owe you?" "Nothing," I said. "Just be you." She smiled faintly. "That's all I've ever wanted to be when I'm with you." Riley didn't show up for class the next day. Then the next. By Friday, the campus felt colder, like someone had turned down the color on everything. I texted her, called her, even went by the field after practice. Her teammates said she'd taken some time off to clear her head. Whatever that meant. Lucy noticed, of course. "You look like a ghost," she said, sitting beside me in the dining hall. "Do I?" I stirred my coffee just to have something to do with my hands. "She's worth it?" Lucy asked gently. The question hit harder than I expected. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I just know it's not something I can walk away from." Lucy sighed, half smiling. "Then don't. But don't lose yourself either." That weekend, I drove to the coast, to the old beach where Riley once said she went as a kid. I didn't plan it. It just felt like the only place she could be. And I was right. She was there, sitting on the sand in a hoodie, staring at the ocean like it held the answers to every question she'd never asked out loud. "Hey," I said softly. She didn't look surprised to see me. "Hey." The wind tugged at her hair, and she looked so small against the endless gray water that it broke something inside me. "They threatened to suspend me," she said after a while. "Said I was a distraction. A controversy waiting to happen." I crouched beside her. Because of us? She nodded. They don't say it outright, but yeah. My coach said he respected my choices but that I needed to think about the team's reputation. Whatever that means. My anger flared. That's bullshit. You've worked harder than anyone on that field. Doesn't matter, she said quietly. When people see me, they don't see the goals I've scored. They see a headline: Gay Soccer Captain Sparks Debate on Campus Values. Her voice cracked at the word gay, like it was a confession she wasn't ready to own yet. I sat beside her, close enough that our shoulders touched. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone, Riley. Not me, not them. She turned to look at me, eyes glistening. Then why does it hurt so much? Because you care, I whispered. Because you're brave enough to be real. She let out a trembling laugh. Brave? I feel like I'm falling apart. Maybe falling apart is what happens right before you finally become yourself. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she leaned her head on my shoulder, and we just sat there watching the tide come in. The waves were slow and heavy, pulling the sand away grain by grain, the kind of rhythm that felt like healing. For the first time in weeks, she didn't look like she was running from something. Over the next few days, things began to shift. Riley decided to face it: the team, the press, the judgment. She asked me to help her write a statement for the university's online page. Nothing dramatic, just honest. I'm not trying to start a fight, she said as we sat at my laptop that night. I just want to stop hiding. So we wrote. About identity. About pressure. About love that doesn't fit the mold but still feels like home. She posted it the next morning, no PR filters, no edits. Just her voice, raw, human, brave. And then the world exploded. Comments flooded in. Some cruel, some kind, most confused. But buried between the noise were messages from girls, strangers, saying things like, thank you. I needed this. And you made me feel less alone. That night, Riley cried in my arms. Not from sadness but from release. They can say whatever they want, she whispered. At least now I'm free. Of course, not everyone was ready to celebrate her freedom. Her parents called. It didn't go well. Her father, a former athlete himself, told her she was throwing away everything for a phase. Her mother cried and asked her to come home. Riley hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. They think I'm broken, she said. They'll come around, I said, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. Maybe, or maybe they won't. But I can't keep waiting for permission to exist. It was the first time I'd ever seen her so certain. 2 weeks later, the sports festival committee invited her back. Apparently, after the backlash, a group of students had started a petition demanding her reinstatement. Over 1,000 signatures. When she stepped back onto the field for the first time, I was in the front row. She looked up at the bleachers, scanning the crowd, and when her eyes found mine, she smiled. Not the kind of smile that hides things, but the kind that says, I made it through. The whistle blew and the game began. I'd seen her play before, but that night was different. She was lighter, faster, like she'd shed a weight she didn't realize she was carrying. Every pass, every strike, every shout was alive with something fierce and joyful. When she scored the winning goal, the stadium erupted. Fireworks burst overhead, gold and silver raining down like blessings. And in that glittering chaos, she ran to the sidelines, not to her coach, not to her teammates, but to me. She didn't care who was watching. She just grabbed my face and kissed me, bold, fearless, beautiful. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then the crowd exploded again, some cheering, some stunned into silence. But none of it mattered. Because in that moment, under the roar of the lights and fireworks, I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. After the game, the chaos followed us. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved forward, questions shouted. But Riley just laced her fingers through mine and whispered, Come on. Let's go home. We ran, laughing, breathless, our shoes slapping against the wet pavement as we escaped down a side street. The night smelled of rain and victory. When we finally stopped under an old streetlight flickering like a dying star, she looked at me and said, You know what's crazy? I used to think love would ruin me. And now? I asked. She smiled softly. Now I think it saved me. But real life doesn't pause for romance. The media storm kept brewing. Articles, podcasts, debates about representation in college sports. Riley tried to stay grounded, but the pressure was constant. I did my best to protect her screening messages, deleting comments before she could see them. Still, one night she found one. A post that called her a disgrace to women's athletics. She stared at it for a long time, then closed her phone and whispered, "I thought it wouldn't get to me anymore." I sat beside her, tracing circles on her hand. "You don't have to be strong all the time." "I know," she said, voice trembling. "But if I'm not strong, who am I?" "You're Riley," I said. "The girl who plays like the world is hers. The girl who made me believe in something real. The girl who's allowed to fall apart, just like everyone else." She buried her face against my shoulder and sobbed deep, quiet, raw. Sometimes love isn't about fixing someone. It's about holding the pieces until they're ready to fit together again. Spring came slowly that year, thawing everything it touched. Riley was reinstated officially, this time with a public statement from the university acknowledging diversity and inclusion in athletics. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. We moved in together that summer, a small apartment near the city park, sunlight spilling through the windows every morning. She'd wake before me, make coffee, and sometimes hum while scrolling through her playlist. I'd pretend to sleep just to watch her, the way the morning light kissed her skin, the way peace finally fit her like a second skin. Our lives weren't extraordinary, but they were ours. She still had nightmares sometimes about losing everything again, and I'd wake her gently, whispering, "You're safe." And every time she'd pull me close and murmur, "Because of you." Then one evening, months later, she got an email from the U.S. Women's League. Tryout offer. She stared at the screen for a full minute before turning to me, eyes wide. "They want me." "Me?" I laughed, tears already threatening. "Of course they do. You're incredible." She shook her head, half in disbelief. "After everything." "I thought they'd never, Riley." I cut her off, taking her hand. "You earned this. Not in spite of who you are. Because of who you are." That night we celebrated with cheap champagne and takeout pizza, dancing barefoot in our tiny kitchen until the neighbors banged on the walls. At one point she spun me around, catching me off guard, her eyes full of that same spark I'd seen the first night under the floodlights. "I don't know where this path goes," she whispered, forehead pressed against mine. "But I want you there. Every step." I smiled through tears. "Always." A month later we drove to the tryouts. She was nervous, I could see it in the way her hands gripped the steering wheel, but she played like she had nothing left to prove. When the recruiters called her name, I could barely breathe. And when she made the team, when her dream finally became real, she ran straight to me again, laughing, crying, shouting, "We did it." Not I. We. Because love at its best is teamwork, two hearts running toward the same goal, even when the field feels endless. That night, as we lay tangled in sheets and quiet, I thought about how far we'd come from that first spark under the stadium lights to this moment of peace and promise. "I used to think the world was too big," I whispered. "Like I'd get lost in it." Riley turned toward me, brushing my hair from my face. "Maybe you just needed someone to get lost with." We kissed, slow, certain, full of everything we'd survived to get here. Outside, the city hummed, and somewhere far away, fireworks from another festival lit up the sky, bright, fleeting, beautiful. And in that flickering light, I realized something simple but true. Love isn't about who you're supposed to be. It's about who you become when you stop hiding. Summer faded into autumn, and our lives slipped into a rhythm that felt almost ordinary, though nothing about what we'd been through was. Riley trained with her new team in Los Angeles, while I stayed behind to finish my final year of art school. The distance was brutal at first. The empty side of the bed, the half-drunk cups of coffee, the quiet that settled over the apartment like a second skin. But every night she'd call, sometimes exhausted, sometimes exhilarated, always hers. "I miss your mess," she'd joke through the phone. "I miss your socks on the kitchen table," I'd tease back. It wasn't easy, but it was real. And after everything, that was enough. One night, while sketching in my studio, I got a text from her. "Riley, turn on the sports channel. Now." I fumbled for the remote, flipping through until the screen showed a packed stadium under golden lights. The commentator's voice boomed. "And there she goes, Riley Carter, the breakout star of the Women's League, leading the score with a breathtaking assist." My heart swelled. She looked radiant, unstoppable, alive. When she scored the final goal, she didn't raise her arms or celebrate wildly. Instead, she looked straight at the camera, drew a tiny heart in the air and mouthed for you. I laughed and cried all at once. 2 weeks later, she came back home for a weekend. I met her at the airport, half running, half tripping over myself. She dropped her duffel bag, scooped me into her arms, and spun me around until we were both dizzy with laughter. "You saw the game?" she asked breathlessly. "I saw everything," I said. We stood there for a moment, forehead to forehead, the noise of the terminal fading into nothing. It didn't matter how far she'd gone somehow, we always found our way back to each other. That night, we walked through the city just like we used to when everything felt uncertain. Neon lights shimmered off the wet pavement, and the air smelled like rain and fried food. She held my hand the entire time, unashamed, unafraid. "Do you ever think about that night?" I asked. "The first time we met?" She grinned. "When you were pretending to be busy filming?" "I was filming." "Sure," she teased, bumping my shoulder. "You just happened to spend half the game pointing your camera at me." I rolled my eyes, laughing. "You were hard to miss." She stopped walking then, turning to face me. "So are you." And under those city lights, bright, chaotic, real, she kissed me again. Not like the first time, full of hesitation and fear, but like someone who finally knows where she belongs. The next morning, she came to my art studio. My senior project was sprawled across the walls: sketches, paintings, photographs. All of them, in one way or another, were her. Riley walked slowly around the room, tracing her fingers over the lines of a charcoal portrait, her silhouette under the stadium lights. "You drew me like you see me," she whispered. "I drew you like you make me feel," I said. She turned to me then, eyes glistening. "Emma, do you ever think about what comes next?" "All the time." She smiled softly. "Then promise me something." "Anything. No matter where we go, no matter how far apart, don't stop doing what makes you you. Don't shrink for anyone, not even for me." I nodded. "Only if you promise the same." "Deal." Months passed. Riley's career skyrocketed. She became not just a player, but a voice speaking openly about representation, inclusion, and the importance of visibility in women's sports. Every interview, every article carried a piece of her truth. Some called her brave. Others called her reckless. But I called her Riley. And even from miles away, she never stopped being mine. My graduation day came faster than I expected. The auditorium buzzed with families, camera flashes, and laughter. I stood in line with my cap slightly crooked, scanning the crowd even though I knew she couldn't be there. She had a game that night. But when my name was called, a familiar voice shouted from the back of the hall, "Go, Emma." I turned, and there she was, still in her travel jacket, hair messy, eyes bright. She must have taken the red-eye flight just to make it. After the ceremony, she found me outside, arms full of flowers. "You're insane," I said, laughing through tears. "Insanely proud," she corrected. We kissed right there under the fluttering graduation banners, and for once no one stared. The world had learned to keep up with us, or maybe we just stopped caring. That summer, we moved to Los Angeles together. It wasn't glamorous, a one-bedroom apartment near a noisy street, walls thin enough to hear the neighbors argue. But it was ours. Riley would train in the mornings, and I'd work at a small gallery downtown. In the evenings, we'd cook, argue about movies, fall asleep to the hum of the city outside our window. Love, I realized, wasn't always fireworks. Sometimes it was just coffee in mismatched mugs, laughter over burnt toast, quiet hands finding each other in the dark. One rainy afternoon, I came home to find her sitting on the couch, scrolling through old videos on her phone. "What are you watching?" I asked. She smiled. "The festival. The night we met." She handed me the phone, and there it was, that moment frozen in time. Her first goal, the lights bursting overhead, me standing behind the camera, wide-eyed and unknowingly capturing the start of everything. "I never thanked you," she said softly. "For what?" "For seeing me before I saw myself." I leaned over, pressing my forehead to hers. "You don't thank someone for loving them, Riley. Then what do? You just love them back." She laughed quietly. "That I can do." The following year brought change. Riley was offered a spot on the national team. It was everything she'd ever dreamed of, but it also meant long absences, constant travel, and endless scrutiny. "Do you think we can handle it?" she asked one night, voice low, vulnerable. I smiled. We've already handled worse. She exhaled, relief softening her features. I just don't want to lose you. You won't, I promised. Because we're not built to break. We bend. We grow. That's what love does. And we did grow together even when apart. She'd send me postcards from every city, little sketches on the back. Sometimes they just said, "Wish you were here." Sometimes I scored for us. And once I saw a rainbow after the game, thought of you. I kept them all in a box under our bed. On the days when I missed her so much it hurt, I'd read them one by one, tracing her handwriting like a prayer. Years later, people would ask how we met, expecting some fairy tale version of the story. And I'd laugh because the truth was messy, it was awkward and loud and terrifyingly real. But I'd tell them this: we met under bright lights. We fell in love in the shadows. And we learned to live somewhere in between. One crisp October evening, long after the noise had faded and fame had settled into something manageable, Riley and I returned to the same stadium where it all began. The seats were empty now, the air cool and quiet. She stood at the center of the field, arms outstretched, spinning slowly under the lights. I used to think these lights were everything, she said. But they were just the beginning. I joined her, slipping my hand into hers. What's the rest then? This, she said, pulling me close. Us. And in that vast, silent space where once the world had watched and judged and shouted, there was only peace. Years would pass. The world would change again and again, and we'd change with it. There would be fights and laughter and new beginnings. There would be mornings when we woke up and still couldn't believe how far we'd come. Riley would eventually retire from professional soccer and start a foundation for young girls who loved the game but didn't always feel like they belonged. She'd call it Play Proud. I'd publish my first book of illustrations, a collection titled The Bright Light Series, inspired by her, by us, by the quiet courage it takes to be seen. And on the dedication page I'd write, "For the girl who taught me that love isn't about finding light, it's about becoming it." Sometimes, late at night, when we sat on the balcony of our little house by the ocean, she'd still tease me about that first night. "You really did aim the camera at me the whole time, didn't you?" "Maybe," I'd admit. "But in my defense, you were the story." And she'd laugh, that same bright, reckless laugh that made everything feel possible. If you ask me what love looks like, I'll tell you this. It's not the fireworks. It's the silence afterward, the calm that comes when you realize you're safe. It's the way someone says your name like it's both a promise and a prayer. It's sitting beside the person you love and knowing you don't have to hide anymore. And sometimes when the night grows still, I can almost hear the echoes of that long ago crowd, the cheers, the lights, the rush of it all. But now the sound doesn't overwhelm me. It reminds me that once, under the bright lights of a sports festival in America, two girls found each other in the middle of chaos and chose to stay. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. And in the end, real is all love ever needs to be. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.